New jobs report out, where the jobs are, all in one chart. Very interesting. Explosion in January jobs in, guess what? Leisure and hospitality.
Yeah, so if you look at the top three categories, first of all, 450,000 jobs, nobody predicted that one, right? Because we were still hearing things of Omicron spreading, and so, what's
450,000 new jobs
450,000 new jobs
were taken.
Yes.
In the month of January.
Yeah, a big spike. And so if we look at where those are broken down, leisure and hospitality, 151,000 of those. So clearly what's happening is we've got restaurants are reopening in some states across the country. Some are staffing back up due to restrictions coming down. I mean, that's just the reality. We're seeing in a lot of states, depending on, we're not getting into politics, but that is how this is divided. And so as states are opening up, so is the leisure and hospitality industry. And so they're staffing up. Obviously, professional and business services, that's just a fancy way of saying small businesses, corporations, businesses are hiring. That was the second highest amount of jobs, 86,000. And then this is interesting. The third highest was retail, 61,000. So we're seeing slowly the thawing across the country as it relates to restrictions and kind of the traditional economy. And so we're seeing retail, which has been hit very hard during the pandemic, seeing those jobs being added. It's very interesting. And then final piece, transportation and warehousing. This is good for manufacturing. Specifically, Dave, we've seen a big supply chain problem. Maybe you've seen it in your grocery stores, depending on where you're listening and viewing from. But truckers, there's a need as of November of 2021, they needed 80,000 truckers to fully staff up on the supply chain. 7,500 truckers were added in the month of January. So it's kind of a snapshot of not just what's happening, but where the opportunities are. For people, let's just be real, you need a bigger shovel. You need to add that second or third job. This is where people are hiring.
More from an economics standpoint, in just the movement and the disruption of labor. Mm-hmm. The pandemic was dramatically unfair to those who could least afford it. Mm-hmm. Servers, hotel maids,
hourly wage earners were hit hard.
People working retail.
Mm-hmm.
None of these are super high-paid gigs, by and large. Not none of them, but most of them aren't. And they were inordinately the hardest hit, mm-hmm. because those were the people that got completely shut down. And now that medical freedom is coming back, and people are free to, in some states it's been for quite a while, and some it's just now a brand new thing, to reopen and travel and stay in a hotel and go to a restaurant. Now we've got states that's still virtually impossible, mm-hmm. to do. But the thing I was hearing at first is that they couldn't get them to come back to work.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I'm wondering if this surge in leisure and hospitality, as an example, is the fact that the freaking unemployment just ran out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
they had to go back to work.
Yeah. Well, we've got a very
magically they went back to work when there's no more unemployment.
That's right. That's part of it. But we're also seeing that the pandemic itself spun off a whole bunch of jobs that didn't exist pre-pandemic. So when you're watching the news, folks, and you hear this, well, we've got this employment gap. We've got more jobs available. It's about 10.3 million versus people who are unemployed. We're now getting into the low eights. We're steamrolling towards a 3%, Dave. You're going to see unemployment rate in the threes very soon. So,
which is by far below real employment. We're in a deficit.
Yeah. So what's going on? Couple things. More jobs have been created that didn't exist pre-pandemic. A lot of health services job. You have a lot of support staff that are being hired to support doctors and nurses. That's one example of where hospitals have staffed up. Now, the other thing that we've seen, Dave, is that more people are starting businesses in the pandemic. If they were laid off or furloughed, or maybe they stayed with it, but they got some stimulus money and they wanted to start that side hustle, as you know, and we teach this entrepreneurship all the time in EntreLeadership, the barrier for entry is lower than it has ever been in the United States to start a business. So we're seeing on the rolls now more companies have been started.
So they not only started a business, didn't go back to the job.
They didn't go back.
But they also now need to hire people.
They do.
That's added even more jobs.
So you think about the person who is making an hourly wage as a waitress or maybe working in a night shift at a hotel. Okay, so you're looking at, I'm just ballparking this, but this is somewhere between a $10 to maybe $12 an hour job. So they can now...
Pre-pandemic.
Yeah. So
now it's $22.
It has jumped. However, they went out and said, hey, I can replace that and I don't have to work the crazy hours. Weekends, and put up with crazy people at your local chain restaurant. These are the restaurants, by the way, that have struggled the most. Your faster food services. For instance, Stacey and I, we went to a lovely dinner locally with my in-laws and my brother and sister-in-law this weekend. We went to a 5-star restaurant. Let me tell you something. They haven't struggled at all, other than the initial shutdown.
But the servers in there are making bank.
Because it's a great experience and the food's great.
And the services make.
The servers are making great
bank,
money,
yeah.
Because people want to go to a high-end experience and have great food. If you look at the chain restaurants, you just looked at human behavior, that's where we saw less traffic and things kind of contract. So all that said, we've seen a great entrepreneurship explosion. We're seeing the tip of it. Over the next 6 months, I think you're going to see a record amount of business starts. In fact, we already know from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, applications to start businesses at the highest rate it's ever been.
So the Supreme Court mandate comes out, and the Supreme Court comes aside and sets the Biden mandate aside for vaccines. Mm-hmm. So companies like ours at Ramsey, if you want to get a vaccine, you can. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to interfere in your medical freedom. You get to decide. Mm-hmm. We don't make you do anything with your medical freedom. Mm-hmm. One way or the other.
That's right.
And so companies like ours are hiring like crazy, and people are leaving these companies that are clamping down on taking their medical freedoms and coming to companies like ours.
Yep.
So we're still seeing that great resignation move.
No
Some
question.
of it is associated with the medical freedom issue. Mm-hmm. Some of it is associated with just this waking up and I hate my job and life's too short and the pandemic reminded me someday I'm going to die.
That's right. And one other thing that we've seen happen. Companies, because you saw the hourly wage go up with Target, Walmart, Amazon leading the way. Here's what's happening. People are leaving their jobs, record pace. 20 million people have left their jobs over the last 5 months. It's going to continue. Why? Because there's a great kind of arms race with companies. They're enticing people with signing bonuses and bigger salaries, and that's going to catch up to people. However, if you need a bigger shovel and you're in the Ramsey tribe, go get it.
Yeah.
Go get it now.
Yeah,
it's not going to last forever.
Because it's not, house prices aren't going to be this, and job prices aren't going to be this white hot forever. Supply-demand curves always shift one way or the other. They never stay exactly where they are, and that includes the supply of labor.
That's correct.
This is The Ramsey Show.